Good morning. I'm your host, Michael Kovnat, and this is the Next Big Idea Daily, quick masterclasses from the best new nonfiction in under 15 minutes. Now, when we think of medicine, we tend to think of something that happens in a clinic or a hospital, a diagnosis, a prescription, a bill. But what if real healing doesn't start with a stethoscope, but with community, with environment, with kinship? In her new book, Kinship Medicine, family and addiction doctor Wendy Johnson challenges our narrow view of health and offers a more expansive, life-centered perspective. Drawing on decades of global experience, she shows how well-being is shaped less by pills and procedures and more by ecosystems, relationships, and values. Here's Wendy to share some of her big ideas.
Hi, I'm Dr. Wendy Johnson. I'm a family and addiction medicine doc who has practiced for over 30 years in the United States and around the globe in clinical medicine and public health. And here are a few insights I've gleaned that led me to write Kinship Medicine. The 80-20 secret of health and wellness. Early in my career, I learned that the medical system deals with just a small fraction of what determines our health. We doctors focus almost entirely on individual biological and genetic factors, but good evidence shows that's only about 20% of what contributes to our well-being. The other 80% is determined by social conditions and environmental context. Things like education, economic status, upbringing, your exposure to pollutants in the air or water, the kind of community or country you might be lucky or unlucky enough to live in, and a million other things we now call the social determinants of health, all largely ignored by modern medicine. So calling this a healthcare system when it only concerns itself with that last 20%, that tip of the iceberg, well, it's like calling yourself a soccer team when you've only got a goalie. As a doctor, I get frustrated focusing on that narrow 20% in the exam room and then pushing patients out into toxic environments that largely cause their illnesses, knowing they'll come right back with the same chronic problems. It felt like I was treating the wrong patient. So I've spent my career trying to find ways for the health professionals and communities I've worked in to push the needle on that other 80%, to create healthier social conditions and environments for all of us, for our collective well-being. Well-being is a collective attribute. Contrary to what predatory wellness grifters will tell you, health is much more a communal attribute than an individual one. It's very difficult to be healthy as an individual when you live in a community that is sick and suffering. Even your body is an ecosystem, in communication with many concentric and overlapping larger ecosystems around you. You couldn't survive as an individual organism without your microbiome fellow travelers. A healthy microbiome is essential for regulating and controlling inflammation throughout the body. Trillions of organisms make up this complex ecosystem that comprises our very being. When things get out of balance, a condition called dysbiosis, we are at increased risk of diseases ranging from eczema to chronic problems like rheumatoid arthritis. These relationships have to function well for us to be healthy. If your air, water, and food are polluted, or if you can't access green space to restore your microbiome, that affects your health. Similarly, if you're isolated or lack supportive relationships, you suffer. We're communal beings. The earth itself is in a state of dysbiosis right now. And in order for us to really be healthy, we have to start addressing the health of the ecosystems and communities we inhabit. Adopting a life-centric mindset is good for humans and good for the earth. Our hyper-individualistic, anthropocentric mindset is killing us, and it's killing the earth too. If we're going to make the necessary shifts in our culture to address the problems of our collective well-being as a species, as well as the health of our environment and the earth, we have to stop thinking of ourselves as the most important animal out there. We have to consider the effects of our action on all other beings, both human and other than human. The philosopher Timothy Morton calls this ecological thinking, recognizing that we're all interdependent on what he calls the mesh of life. When you're part of a family, when you're part of a community, You think about your actions and how they're going to affect other members of that community or family. When you extend that idea of kinship to our whole ecosystem, we start to think more about our sense of responsibility to other beings. That also means we start asking different questions. Do I really need this product? Is this decision good for my community or environment, or is it just what consumer culture has taught me to want? We've been sold the idea of antiseptic, hyper-convenient living, and we've been conditioned to think we have a lot of needs that didn't exist just a few years ago. But all that comes with enormous environmental and health costs. Just shifting to a new mindset is not enough. We have to start acting from that new way of looking at the world. Our communal muscle is atrophied. It needs exercise like any other muscle. 25 years ago, in his book Bowling Alone, political scientist Robert Putnam argued that Americans were increasingly disconnected from their communities, leading to a weakening of social bonds and a decline in civic participation. He predicted that this trend would have devastating consequences for our collective well-being and for our democracy. I would say his predictions have come true. Community cohesiveness in the United States was weakening well before 2020. Then the pandemic came around and dealt a devastating blow. The human brain actually changes the longer we are more socially isolated. We get more paranoid and suspicious of social interaction. We fear each other more. We can see that play out in communities all over the country. In many places, when someone unexpected knocks at the door, it provokes feelings of fear and immediate thoughts of possible threat. What does this person want? We peer through windows suspiciously or more often at a screen at the Ring camera. In contrast, in my rural village outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, I know all my neighbors well because we all have shared resources and projects. We all work together to maintain a centuries-old irrigation ditch system. If I hear a knock on my door, it's probably a neighbor needing help, so I open it with a feeling of curiosity and compassion. We are so isolated right now, and that isolation has fueled disconnection and polarization in our political systems. Face-to-face connection, especially through shared projects, does the opposite, and we can find examples of those activities in our communities or create them. After the pandemic deepened our disconnection, especially for young people, we'll need to rebuild the skills of being together, just like reconditioning a weakened muscle. We need to retrain our brains. The good news is that deepening social interaction changes our brain chemistry back to being more compassionate and trusting. When we connect face-to-face, especially in nature, something shifts. We fall in love with each other again and with the world. And when you feel kinship with people, with the land, you fight for what you love. I believe our politics would look radically different if more of us were grounded in that kind of connection. Embracing death can give you more appreciation and joy in life. About 15 years ago, when I was working in Africa, I almost died in a plane crash. I was on a small turboprop flying from South Africa to Mozambique when suddenly I heard a loud bang and then silence. The plane lurched into a spiraling nosedive. I knew the ground couldn't be too far away and we'd come crashing into it. I was 100% certain I was about to die. Then suddenly we pulled out of it, and the next day in the South African newspapers, I saw that we were just 700 feet from the ground. For days afterwards, I felt the preciousness of life in each moment. My senses were heightened, food tasted better. A breeze on my skin felt like a crisp, tingling embrace. The effect only lasted a few weeks, but I still reflect on the moment and wish I could have bottled that feeling to imbibe later. Our Western culture pushes death to the margins, but we can look to other cultures that embrace death and see grieving as a communal practice. When I lived in Mozambique, my home was on the route from the church to the cemetery. All day, every Saturday and Sunday, a steady stream of flatbed trucks rumbled by, filled with mourners pressed closely together, swaying and embracing and supporting each other. Death is not hidden away in Mozambique, a country with high rates of HIV and infant mortality. Almost everyone experiences the passing of a loved one while they're still in childhood. Space for grieving communally is built into the culture, and the Mozambicans I encountered also know how to feel deep joy. Celebrations of birth or marriage can be a many-day raucous affair. I came to understand that the Mozambican embrace of death and grieving is directly related to their deeply felt expressions of joy. A slew of research shows that those who feel closer to death are much more likely to focus on relationships of the people close to them and on the present moment, and therefore more likely, paradoxically, to be happier and enjoy life more. Not all of us will have a near-death experience, but all of us can get acquainted with death and come to terms with its inevitability, and it might help us enjoy life that much more.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, everyone. You can get a copy of Kinship Medicine using the link in the episode notes. That's our show for today. If you got something out of it, please leave us a 5-star rating and a glowing review so others can find it too. And stay tuned to the next Big Idea Daily, because this week we'll be bringing you lots of big ideas that are going to make your life a little brighter. I'm Michael Kovnat. Hope to see you tomorrow.